Enclose parenthetic expressions between commas. The best way to see a country, unless you are pressed for time, is to travel on foot. So the big question here is, how do you know that you should use these offsetting commas? And Strunk notes this resoundingly. He states, this rule is difficult to apply. It is frequently hard to decide whether a single word, such as however or brief phrase, is or is not parenthetic. If the interruption to the flow of the sentence is but slight, the writer may safely omit the commas. But whether the interruption be slight or considerable, he must never insert one comma and omit the other. Such punctuation as Marjorie's husband, Colonel Nelson, paid us a visit yesterday. That's wrong. Or my brother, you will be pleased to hear, comma, is now in perfect health. That's wrong. Is indefensible. So you cannot defend that grammar. If a parenthetic expression, so basically commit, you want to commit. Either use both of those commas or use neither. But you want to make sure you're committing to one side or the other. If a parenthetic expression is preceded, that means comes before a conjunction, place the first comma before the conjunction, not after it. Here's an example. He saw us coming, and unaware that we had learned of his treachery, greeted us with a smile. He saw us coming, comma, and unaware that we had learned of his treachery, comma, greeted us with a smile. Always to be regarded as parenthetic and to be enclosed between commas or at the end of the sentence between comma and period are the following. Number one, the year when forming the part of a date, and the day of the month when following the day of the week. So if you're saying February to July 1916, that's where the comma goes. This is pretty common. April 6th, comma 1917. And this is also pretty common. Monday, most people know this one as well. Monday, comma November 11th, comma 1918. And the abbreviations, etc., and junior. Non-restrictive relative clauses, that is, those which do not serve to identify or define the antecedent noun, and similar clauses introduced by conjunctions indicating time or place. Here's an example of that. The audience, which had first been indifferent, became more and more interested. So this is sort of what's considered an appositive. And appositive, A-P-P-O-S-I-T-I-V-E, generally restates the noun or the pronoun. It's like Stephen, comma, the blonde-haired boy, Stephen, comma, the blonde-haired boy, comma, came to school early this morning, period. So that would be considered a positive. This is sort of a positive. It basically rephrases. It's saying the audience, which had at first been indifferent. It's not sort of stating, it's not restating the audience, but it's talking about the audience's condition. At first it was indifferent. At first the audience was indifferent, but then it became more and more interested as the play went on. So the audience, comma, which had at first been indifferent, comma, became more and more interested. It's structured a lot like in a positive. And especially if it feels like it's different, it's like the other, or it's showing a contrast. That's the biggest way that me as a student, that I made the decision to use the commas or not. The more it stands out, or you're trying to show a contrast, the more likely it is that you're going to use commas. Two separate conditions. The audience at first was indifferent, and then as the play wore on, or as the show wore on, or as the class wore on, became more and more interested. Actually, wouldn't be an audience. It would be like a show. So it wouldn't be. It would be the students, not the audience. If I was talking about a classroom. All right. In this sentence, the clause introduced by which does not serve to tell which of the several possible audiences is meant. What audiences in question is supposed to be already known. The clause adds parenthetically a statement supplementing that in the main clause. The sentence is virtually a combination of the two statements, which might have been made independently. The audience had at first been indifferent, period. It became more and more interested. Compare the restrictive relative clause not set off by commas in the sentence. The candidate who best meets these requirements will obtain the place. Here the clause introduced by who does serve to tell which of several possible candidates is meant. The sentence cannot be split up into two independent statements. The difference in punctuation in the two sentences following is based on the same principle. Nether Stowey, where Coleridge wrote the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, is a few miles from Bridgewater. The day will come when you will admit your mistake. So, Nether Stowey is completely identified by its name. The statement about Coleridge is therefore supplementary and parenthetic. So it's sort of a supplement. It's sort of starting to feel like a positive. They're not mentioning this as a positive. We'll definitely look up a lot of these literary terms in other videos. I'm definitely not an English genius. There are probably some English geniuses that are going to correct every little mistake that I make on these videos, and I definitely appreciate that. But this is very close to and a positive. But the point being is that you've got a noun, and then you're sort of restating that noun, or sort of describing that noun as supplemental information, which it makes it obvious that we should have offsetting commas. Nether Stowey, comma, where Coleridge wrote the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, comma, is a few miles from Bridgewater. The day will come when you will admit your mistake. So the day spoken of is identified only by the dependent clause, rather, which is therefore restrictive. Similar in principle to the enclosing of parenthetic expressions between commas is the setting off by commas of phrases or dependent clauses preceding or following the main clause of a sentence. Okay, so let's check this sentence out. Partly by hard fighting, partly by diplomatic skill, they enlarged their dominions to the east and rose to royal rank with the possession of Sicily, exchanged afterwards for Sardinia. I like this sentence a lot. It really covers a lot of ground fast, so it might be a little bit daunting, and you as a writer might want to split this into two separate sentences, so the progression of time can sort of pace itself. Depends on what you're writing about, though, right? Depends on what the object of that essay is, right? If you're trying to share a lot of detail, it might behoove you to have a longer, write more sentences. However, if you just want to cut to the chase and want to get to Sardinia or get to that exchange of those conquered lands, then having one sentence that moves briskly with all these commas might be the better choice. So just remember that it's all about, these are very important grammatical rules, but it also depends on the venue where you're writing and what the function of those details is. And hopefully throughout the other videos, you can really get the gist of what I'm talking about, because each venue is going to dictate, the way that you write and the amount of detail and the patience that you take, or the brisk speed that you take with regards to getting to the point. But yeah, it's pretty obvious. I mean, you couldn't really break these apart, and not have those commas. Partly by hard fighting, partly these are obvious places to put the commas. Other illustrations may be found in sentences. But yeah, this is, we'll go over this other stuff in future videos. But these commas, a lot of it also, guys, is just, it's so obvious, but it must be mentioned, which is just to read a lot of good literature, good writing, good websites even. I mean, there are some really good websites. newsela.org is phenomenal. I like Time. I like a lot of the news ones. Bloomberg, Reuters. A lot of times those are really well written, and a lot of the content aggregators, those generally aren't as I see a lot of grammatical errors on those. Not to call anyone out specifically, um, but I recommend books and literature and dictionaries and thesauruses, especially when you're young. But anyways, all right, guys, thanks a lot.